As we've reported, there's been much debate about ICE enforcement both nationally and here in New Jersey. One Republican state senator has been calling for cooler heads to prevail, and she's got some priorities of her own that she'd like to share. Senator Holly Schepisi joins us now. Senator, thanks so much for taking some time today. Great to talk to you. Let's start with some of the priorities that you wanted to see in this legislative session that we've just begun. You say affordability is important to you. What are some of your priorities?
Affordability is the one thing that we keep hearing from everybody in New Jersey. We need to ensure whether or not it's our utilities, whether or not it's allowing our middle class who are working night and day to be able to afford a home and to stay in their homes. And so one of the bills that just passed committee is one that will allow regional partnerships, will allow municipalities to work in conjunction with one another for regional planning. It's kind of an outside the box way of thinking, and enables our communities to really sit together, do economic planning, economic partnerships beyond just their municipal borders. And it's a pathway to kind of help find efficiency, cost sharing, cost savings, which in turn will help our local taxpayers.
Is this, Senator, a form of shared services that we've heard a lot about but haven't really been able to get off the ground in New Jersey?
It's a blend. It would enable shared services without the red tape of Trenton. It would allow partnerships with nonprofits, local colleges. It would allow for regional planning. If you have large developments that are abandoned, retail centers, strip malls that straddle municipal or even county borders, it would enable with the stakeholders of each of these communities to sit down and to be able to set their own pathway.
You also would like to see some tax incentives for home buyers. What would you like that to look like?
So our system is so broken. Right now, if you are kind of at the lowest end of the spectrum with income, there is plenty of availability with all of the quote unquote affordable housing mandates that have taken place. If you're wealthy enough, you can buy something. But it's everybody in between. We are taking away the ability for moderate income people to own anything. We need to, instead of building high density housing up and down this entire state, we really need to refashion what we have been doing and put together programs that incentivize developers to come in and to build moderately priced homes for sale that count against affordable housing obligations in this state. We are ensuring that people have to stay in rental housing and don't have any sort of thing to build their net worth.
I want to switch gears just a little bit because you've been vocal on Facebook about some of the recent ICE activity that we saw in Minneapolis in particular, but we've seen ramped up ICE activity here in New Jersey. Even last night, there was an encounter with an individual who ICE agents say has a criminal record. That is under investigation. But you've called for a measured response, including investigating incidents where there is a shooting by by an ICE agent. Why do you believe that's important?
I think right now, for the public at large, as leaders, we have to speak up and we need to be able to ratchet down the tone. What we have seen in Minnesota, of course, we need to investigate, and we need to investigate properly why 2 people died. And anybody who kind of says, oh, no, 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 that concerns me. We are now putting distrust, not just for ICE agents who are not traditional law enforcement, but it's filtering into law enforcement as well. We need to ensure, and in Minnesota, could it be the policies that prohibit any sort of communication between local law enforcement and federal officials that has caused some of this? Absolutely. Could it be that ICE agents are being deployed without the appropriate amount of training? Absolutely. But we need to do better. And on both sides of the aisle, we need to kind of take a step back and say, how do we do this properly? People who are here who have committed the most horrific crimes, they should not be protected and should be able to be deported. And it's happened under every single administration, Republican and Democrat. I think right now things are so heightened because of 24-hour-a-day news cycles, because of escalation where you have leaders who are pointing fingers and calling everybody terrorists, and then on the other side saying ICE agents are the devil. We need to be able to get back to a pragmatic approach on how we handle immigration. And I don't see that happening. And so that's why, in New Jersey, I voted against the most recent ICE bills that got put forward, two of which Governor Murphy actually pocket vetoed because they were hastily written up. They created a bigger schism between law enforcement and the community, and they also protected the very worst of the worst that I don't think was the intent of the bill.
Let me ask you, Senator, let me ask you this. First, you say an investigation is needed. Quickly, do you believe that should be an independent investigation?
Unequivocally. I think right now you have just such a politically charged environment between Minnesota and the federal government that I would implore both sides to just allow, for the sake of everybody, a very unbiased, independent, impartial investigation to take place and to present to Congress what needs to be done better to ensure that we don't have future violence like that.
Let me ask you this. It's hard not to see the contrast between the situations that played out in Minnesota with an ICE officer who shot at the driver of a moving vehicle versus here in New Jersey where the officer shot at the tires of a vehicle that was approaching him. DHS says that this officer in New Jersey followed the training. So does that beg the question then, is there uniformity with the training? You mentioned that there needs to be perhaps better training. What would you like to see?
I would like to see an analysis of the training. I think, this push to meet quotas may have resulted in, well-meaning people who are signing up to be ICE agents who aren't getting the appropriate level of training. You have, police officers. You have, on average, police academies with, months and months and months of training with kind of a measured approach of where people get placed within a department based upon, time in what they've been doing. Here, you're talking about, in most instances, new agents having less than 8 weeks of training that is not necessarily tailored to these sort of very high-stress, high-intensity type of situations. And I think we really do need to look at that.
But that's all the time we have. Senator Holly Schepisi, I want to thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.